11 months. That's how long it had been since I last saw Iris. 11 months since I walked out of the apartment we shared. Left my keys on the kitchen counter, and drove to a parking lot to call my boss and ask if I could work remote for the rest of the week. I didn't explain why. He said yes. That was that. I had built a new life. Denver. New job. New apartment on the 3rd floor with a doorbell camera above the peephole. A woman named Audrey, who laughed at things that were actually funny. Then, on a Wednesday morning at 8:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. I'm pregnant. I think it's yours. I read it once. Read it again. Set the phone down and finished my coffee. Here's the thing. 11 months. Not 10. Not 9. 11. Before I even touched my keyboard, I knew exactly what that number meant. I knew whose baby it was. And it was not mine. I didn't call her. I didn't text back. I opened my laptop and ordered a prenatal paternity DNA test. Same morning. Same cup of coffee. This story isn't just about Iris. It's about my brother. It's about a Christmas dinner where my mother asked me to stay quiet while he sat in my old chair. It's about a family that looked me in the eye and chose him every single time. But it starts here. With one text. And a DNA test I ordered before I even replied. She said it was mine. I already knew, not mine. Let me back up. 2 years before that text, I was engaged to Iris. We had a 2-bedroom apartment, a shared lease with 14 months left on it, and a $2,400 ring I'd saved for over 8 months. I was a senior logistics coordinator, stable job, consistent paycheck. Not flashy. Just reliable. I paid the bills on time. Kept the fridge stocked. Showed up. That was the kind of man I was. I thought it was enough. Preston had a key to our apartment. I gave it to him myself. My brother is 2 years younger than me. He dropped out of college after 1 semester and spent the next several years in a pattern I watched so many times it stopped surprising me. He'd fall, and our parents would catch him. They covered his rent twice, $900 a month, both times, no documentation, no repayment plan, no questions. When he rear-ended someone and lost the job that went with it, Dad made some calls. Handled it quietly. Problem dissolved. Mom called it giving him time to find himself. Dad called it keeping this family together. That phrase, keeping this family together, I heard it over a dozen times in 5 years. Always after something Preston had done. Never once after something I needed. I was the older one. I set the example. I didn't ask to be caught. Dad said it again at a Sunday dinner that fall, right there at the table, smiling like it was a toast. This is what family's about. I smiled back. I didn't know yet that Preston had been helping himself to more than just the safety net. Looking back, and I've had 11 months to do exactly that, there were signs. I just didn't read them. Twice I came home to find Iris on the phone. Both times she hung up fast. Said it was a girlfriend from work. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Then there was the jacket. Preston left it at our place one evening after dinner, navy blue, zip up. A week later it was gone. I asked Iris. She said she dropped it off at his place on her way somewhere. I said, oh, okay. That was the whole conversation. I handed Preston a key because he was my brother. I trusted him with my home. That jacket should have been the first question I asked. The afternoon it happened, I wasn't supposed to be home. I had a 2 p.m. meeting on the calendar. My boss sent a cancellation at 1:47 p.m. Something came up on his end. We'd reschedule. I packed my laptop, left the office, and thought, good. I'll go home early, maybe start dinner. I used my key. Walked in. I don't need to tell you what I saw. You already know. What I want you to understand is what I did next, because this is the part nobody expects. I didn't yell. I didn't say a single word. I set my keys on the kitchen counter slowly, deliberately, the way you set something down when you already know you're not coming back for it, and I walked out. Pulled the door shut behind me, took the elevator down, sat in my car in the parking garage, and called my boss. I asked if I could work remote for the rest of the week. He said yes. No questions. I drove to a hotel. Paid $94 for one night. Sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the wall for a while. Then I opened my laptop and sent 3 emails, one to my boss, one to my landlord, one to a moving company I found on Google. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just started making decisions. I never went back to that apartment. That evening, my phone started going off. Not Preston. Not Iris. My mother, 7:42 p.m. 14 minutes. She said we needed to handle this as a family. She said Preston had made a mistake. She said these things happen. At no point in those 14 minutes did she ask if I was okay. My dad called at 8:20 p.m., 6 minutes. He used the phrase keeping this family together twice. I counted. My older sister texted at 9:01 p.m. Don't do anything you'll regret. I read every message. Answered none of them. And Preston, the one who had been in my apartment, with my fiancée, on a Tuesday afternoon, Preston never called. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not once. My mother called for him. He didn't even have the spine to dial my number. I broke the lease. It cost me $1,100 in early termination fees. I paid it without arguing, packed what was mine into a rented van, and drove to Denver. 6 weeks from the day I walked out to the day I carried the last box into a third-floor unit at $1,340 a month. New city. New job, senior operations analyst, $4,000 more a year. I changed my number for about a week, then changed it back. I didn't want to look like I was hiding. I hadn't done anything wrong. 3 months in, I met Audrey at a company mixer. Second week of September. She laughed at things that were actually funny. That was enough to start. My family kept texting. I read every message. Answered none of them. That should have been the end of it. Then December came, and my mother called every day for 3 weeks. She didn't call to check on me. She called to make sure I was coming home for Christmas. She used the word family the way some people use a crowbar wedged into every gap, applied with steady pressure until something gave. After 3 weeks, I gave. I booked a flight back. I don't know why. Maybe I still needed to see it clearly. Preston was there. With Whitney, his new girlfriend. She was warm and easy and touched his arm when she laughed. She had absolutely no idea what she'd walked into. I watched her for a moment and thought, she doesn't know what he did. And nobody in this room is going to tell her. As long as everyone stayed quiet, she'd keep smiling. She'd keep touching his arm. She'd keep building something on top of a lie. That was the price of keeping this family together. Dad gave a toast before dinner. He raised his glass and talked about strength, about hard times, about how proud he was of everyone at this table. He looked at Preston when he said it. Then I found my seat. My old chair, Dad's right side. 30 years of Christmas dinners had Preston's jacket draped over the back. My name card was at the far end of the table. Nobody moved it. Nobody said anything. I sat down at the far end. I ate my dinner. He's sitting in my chair and nobody moved it. At 8:30, I said my goodbyes. Early flight, I told them. Preston stopped me at the door. First words he'd said to me directly all evening. He put his hand out and said, I hope we can get past this. You know I love you, man. I looked at him for a second. Really looked. Then I said, good night, Preston. Nothing else. I walked past his hand. My older sister followed me out to the driveway. She grabbed my arm and said, you need to try harder. He's still your brother. I kept walking. At my car, my younger sister caught me. She leaned in and said quietly, I don't think what he did was okay. I just want you to know that. I nodded. I got in the car. I said good night. I didn't say I'd be back. 5 months after Christmas, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a doorbell camera alert. I was at my desk. 2:51 p.m. I opened the app and looked at the footage. Iris. Standing at my door in Denver. 3rd floor. Gray jacket. Visibly pregnant. I sat with that image for a long moment. Then I forwarded the footage to my email, saved it to my phone, and saved it again to my cloud drive. All 3. I don't know why I did all 3 in that order. The same instinct that made me set my keys down slowly on that counter, I suppose. Something in me already understood this was going to need documentation. I left the office at 3. Called her from the parking lot at 3:10. She said she'd rather talk in person. I said, there's a coffee shop 2 blocks from my building. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She was pregnant and standing at my door in a city she had no reason to be in. Whatever she was about to say, I already knew I was going to need it in writing. She sat down across from me and said the baby was mine from before everything fell apart. 20 weeks along, she told me. The timing lined up. I did the math out loud. Slowly. No raised voice, just numbers. 20 weeks is 5 months. 5 months ago, I had been living in Denver for 6 months. The last time I'd been in the same room as Iris was Christmas dinner. Before that, the last real contact between us was the morning I walked out of our apartment and left my keys on the counter. 11 months ago. I laid all of that out across the table, one fact at a time. She shifted in her seat. Said, timelines aren't always exact. These things blur. I noticed something then. She hadn't said the baby was mine. She'd said it could be mine. That word could was doing a lot of heavy lifting in a sentence that was trying to sound certain. I said, I'll need a DNA test. She looked at me like I'd said something cruel. Then, you'd really put me through that? After everything you put this relationship through? I let that sit for a second. Then I said, yes, I'll need a DNA test. She said fine. She'd send me the details. I finished my water. We didn't say anything else. I drove home, opened a new folder on my desktop, and wrote down everything she'd said, her exact words, the timestamps, the location. I titled the folder Documentation. It had one file in it. It wouldn't stay that way for long. 3 days later, the email arrived. Iris had scheduled a non-invasive prenatal paternity test at a diagnostic clinic 4 miles from my apartment. Blood draw. Results in 5 to 7 business days. My cost, $385. I read it once. Then I read it again. Because there in the CC line, sitting in plain text like she hadn't even thought about it, was an email address I recognized immediately. Preston's. She had copied my brother on the email booking my paternity test. Either she forgot he was on it, or she wanted him to know exactly what was happening and when. Either way, I had it. I took a screenshot of the full email header, CC line, timestamp, 4:17 p.m. I saved it to the documentation folder. Then I wrote back to Iris, and only Iris, confirming the appointment. I didn't say a word about the CC line. I just added it to the file and let her think I hadn't noticed. I had 7 days before the results came back. I used all 7. The morning after the blood draw, I opened the documentation folder and started building. 4 pages. No emotional language, no opinions. Just dates, numbers, and facts arranged in columns. Page 1, the relationship timeline. The last verified night Iris and I spent together a weekend trip we'd taken the previous February. 2 nights at a hotel outside the city. I still had the receipt, $187, charged to my card, dated 14 months before she showed up at my door in Denver. Last confirmed contact. I listed it with the receipt number. Page 2, Iris's stated gestational age against my documented absence. 20 weeks puts conception at 5 months ago. I had been in Denver for 11 months. The gap between those 2 numbers was 6 months. Not a rounding error. An impossibility. Her claim on the left column. The math on the right. Page 3, the CC email. Full screenshot. Header metadata intact. Timestamp, 4:17 p.m. Preston's address sitting in the CC line, unedited, exactly as she sent it. Page 4, the doorbell camera footage. Timestamp, 2:47 p.m. Iris at my door. Visibly pregnant, in a city she had no reason to be in. I added a cover sheet with the clinic's case number and exported the whole thing as a PDF, 6 pages total. I saved it in 3 places. 7 days. I used all 7. Now I just needed the number to confirm what I already knew. 6 days after the blood draw, the results appeared on the clinic's patient portal. I opened them at my kitchen table. Read the report once. Then read it again. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0.00%. Not unlikely. Not inconclusive. Not low. 0. The 11 months, the 6-month gap, the word could doing all that heavy lifting in that coffee shop. The lab had just confirmed every bit of it in 4 characters. I took a full screenshot. Clinic name. Case number. Date. Result. Saved it to the folder. Then I opened my texts and sent Iris the screenshot with 2 words underneath it. Not mine. She replied within the hour. That test can be wrong. I read it. Didn't respond. Added her reply to the file, timestamped. The math was always right. The lab just made it official. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The math was always right. The lab just made it official. I sent her 2 words, not mine. She said the test could be wrong. I said nothing. I just added her reply to the file. 2 days later, my phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. It was Whitney. She'd found the CC email on Preston's phone. She confronted him. He admitted the affair, admitted it had been going on for months before I walked out. Admitted the baby was his. Whitney wasn't going to take his word for the paternity either, and I respected that. She used a certified lab. Sent me a photo of the result herself, no preamble, just the document. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. I looked at that number for a long time. Not because I was surprised. I wasn't surprised by a single digit. I looked at it because it closed the last door. 0 on my side, 99.97 on his. There was no angle left. No timeline that bent far enough. No version of this story where any part of it was my problem. I added Whitney's result to the folder, now 8 pages, including her cover note and the lab header. I thanked her for calling. She said, "I'm sorry this happened to you." I said, "I'm sorry it happened to you too." She hung up. I sat at my desk for a while. Then I opened the folder. Read through all 8 pages from the beginning, and thought about who else needed to read them. Everyone who had been in that room at Christmas dinner. Every single one of them. I sat with those 8 pages for 3 days before I decided what to do with them. Not because I was uncertain. I knew what I was going to do from the moment I wrote down the words everyone who was in that room at Christmas dinner. I sat with it because I wanted to be sure I was acting on fact and not feeling. And I wanted to understand my exposure before I moved. I called a family law attorney. 45-minute phone consultation, $150. I laid out the full situation, the 0% result, Iris's pregnancy claim, the CC email, the 11-month timeline. I asked where I stood. She said the 0% result was a strong shield. Negative prenatal paternity test, documented in writing, response sent promptly in most states. That's sufficient to establish non-paternity and shut down any future claim. She told me to keep every communication with Iris, respond to nothing without documentation, and stay consistent. I thanked her. Added the consultation notes to the folder. That should have been enough to make the decision easy. It almost was. Then my younger sister called. Mentioned, almost in passing, that the family group chat had been active, a lot of talking, a lot of processing, a lot of deciding what the story was going to be going forward. She asked if I'd been following along. I told her I hadn't seen anything. She went quiet. Then she sent me a screenshot. I had been removed from the group chat. Quietly, with no announcement, at some point in the last 2 months, my name was just gone. 2 months of conversations about my life, my family, my situation, and they hadn't thought to include me in a single word of it. They were building the official version of this story without me in the room, keeping this family together just without me in it. The last hesitation I had dissolved right there. That Sunday night, I opened a blank email and wrote 387 words. No insults. No emotional language. No demands for apologies I was never going to receive, just the record, chronological, factual, and fully sourced. The relationship timeline. The hotel receipt from February, dated 14 months before Iris showed up at my door. The 11-month gap laid out in plain numbers. The CC email with Preston's address visible in the header. The doorbell footage timestamp. The 0% result, full report attached. Whitney's 99.97%, full report attached. 6 attachments. All labeled. All dated. The recipients, mom, dad, older sister, Preston, 4 aunts and uncles, 2 family friends who had come to our engagement party 3 years ago and sent a card and a set of wine glasses I'd never used. 11 people. Every single person who had been in that Christmas dinner room and a few who hadn't, but who I knew had been told a version of this story already. I reread the email once from the top. Every word was accurate, every word was provable. Subject line. A few facts. For the record, I didn't hit send. This was the line. Not the DNA test, not the CC email, not even the 0% result. This was the moment I could not take back, the moment I stopped being the person who stayed quiet and started being the person who made sure everyone knew exactly what had happened and exactly who had done it. I knew that the second I scheduled it, there was no version of my family that survived the morning. I scheduled it for 7:14 a.m., Tuesday. I wanted it to be the first thing they saw when they opened their eyes. Then I closed my laptop and went to sleep. Tuesday morning. 7:14 a.m. I was at my kitchen table in Denver when the sent confirmation came through. Coffee in hand, Audrey still asleep in the next room. The apartment was quiet in the way apartments are quiet before anything has happened yet. I read the confirmation once. Set my phone down and finished my coffee. The email had gone to 11 people. It opened with one line. The only line I'd spent any real time writing, because I wanted it to be the last time I ever had to explain any of this. I'm sending this once, to everyone who was in the room at Christmas dinner, because I will not be explaining this twice. Then the record, the relationship timeline. The hotel receipt from February, 14 months before Iris appeared at my door. The 11-month gap, laid out in a 2-column table, her claim on one side, the math on the other. The CC email, header and metadata intact. Preston's address sitting in the CC line exactly as Iris had left it. The doorbell camera footage, timestamp 2:47 p.m. The 0% lab result, clinic name and case number included. Whitney's 99.97%, clinic name and case number included. 6 attachments, every one labeled, every one dated. The email closed with one paragraph. I'd written it last, and I'd almost cut it, but I didn't. You spent a year telling me to keep this family together. I spent that year keeping the receipts. Here they are. Subject line. A few facts, for the record. By 7:30 a.m., the phone had started ringing. My mother called at 7:28 a.m. I watched her name light up the screen and let it go. She called again at 7:31. Let that go too. She left a voicemail, 3 minutes, Crying, variations on how could you do this to us. Dad texted at 7:45 a.m., call me. This is not how we handle things in this family. My older sister left a voicemail at 8:10 a.m., you had no right to involve other people. Call mom. She's devastated. At 8:03 a.m. before my older sister, before dad's second attempt my younger sister texted, I always knew what he did wasn't okay. I love you. I'm so sorry it took this long for anyone to say that. I read that one 3 times. 2 aunts reached out separately by 9 a.m., one texted, we believe you. The other called and left a message saying she was sorry I'd been carrying this alone. One of the family friends who'd been at our engagement party sent an email, we never thought this was your fault. We're glad you finally told us the truth. And Preston, whose address was in that CC line. Preston, whose 99.97% result was attached to the email 11 people had now opened. Preston, who had never called the night I walked out, never called at Christmas, never called after. He didn't call that morning either. Radio silence, from the one person whose name was on every single page of that folder. That was his answer. Dad called again at 10:15 a.m. This time, I picked up. He didn't wait, what you did this morning was completely out of line. You embarrassed this entire family. If you had an issue, you should have come to us. We could have handled this privately. I let him finish. Then I said, you did handle it privately, Dad. You removed me from the family group chat 2 months ago and didn't tell me. That was your version of handling it quietly, without me in the room. A pause. Then, that's not we were giving everyone space to process. Everyone, I said, except me. He shifted something about perspective, about healing, about how families find their way back when both sides are willing to try. I waited until he was done. Then I said, Dad. You chose him. Every single time something happened, you chose him. For 30 years. I needed you to choose right just once. One time. You couldn't do it. Silence on his end, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, quieter than before, don't you still want to keep this family together? One more time. That phrase. The same one he'd used at Sunday dinners and Christmas toasts and 6-minute phone calls while I was sitting in a hotel room $94 from the life I used to have. Keep this family together. I said, we're done, Dad. I hung up. Opened my contacts. Blocked him. Blocked my mother. Blocked my older sister. Blocked Preston. My younger sister's number I left open. She was the only one who'd told me the truth without being forced to. 6 weeks later, I was still in Denver. Audrey asked me about the whole story about 2 weeks after the email went out. We were sitting at the same kitchen table where I'd read the sent confirmation. She said, do you want to tell me all of it? I did. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that must have taken a long time to put together. I said, 11 months. She nodded. We made dinner. That was the whole conversation. That's what it looks like when someone is actually in your corner. My younger sister calls every other Sunday. She confirmed what I'd already suspected. Preston and Whitney were done. Whitney had moved out within a week of the email. Iris was living with her parents. The family group chat had gone almost completely quiet. 3 weeks after the email, my mother sent one text, I miss you. I read it. Didn't reply. Didn't block her either. I'm still not sure what that means. Maybe I'm leaving one door cracked for a reason I haven't worked out yet. Or maybe I just didn't have the energy to close it all the way. Either way, I didn't walk back through it. I sold the engagement ring at a jewelry resale shop 6 weeks after I moved to Denver, paid $2,400 for it, got $1,850 back. That money went straight to my security deposit. A ring that was supposed to be a beginning ended up being the down payment on a different life. I don't think that's poetic. I just think that's how things go sometimes. I don't miss Iris. I stopped missing her around month 3. I don't miss Preston either, not exactly. What I miss is the brother I thought he was. That brother never existed. I'm done looking for him. My family kept saying family together. Over and over, at every dinner, in every phone call, like if they said it enough times it would become true. The DNA test said 0%. Turns out 0% was the most honest thing any of them ever gave me. If this story hit close to home, subscribe, there are more of them.